Welcome to the Praxis Report. I'm your co-host, William Barth,
And I'm your co-host, Jonathan Brown.
and we're the Praxis Report that really takes a little different point of view than your average podcast. We try to bring some scholarly, theoretical analysis to the very difficult political challenges we face in the current day and try to provide some practical solutions that we can implement to address those very difficult political challenges. Today, we're going to continue that effort with a look and some analyzation about the new Trump era, the new Trump administration, particularly with regard to Mr. Trump's foreign policy initiatives. Again, we have these very difficult political challenges to confront. On the one hand, you have this claim that Mr. Trump is a fascist, madman, authoritarian. He certainly, in his early initial steps or early days in the administration, appears to be filling that role, calling for what appears to be hostilities towards Canada, towards Denmark and Greenland. He wants to liberate Greenland from Danish control, apparently. It's probably because there's some oil there for his oil buddies, in the big energy corporations. Yet, on the other hand, there's this incredible irony that Trump is attacking the sort of bipartisan neoconservative warmongering policies of Biden and Harris and some of the neoconservative Republicans, calling for war on Palestine, war on the Russian Federation in Ukraine, war on the People's Republic of China in Taiwan, war, and more war. And it seems to be Donald Trump as the only sort of show in town who's standing up to that warmongering call of the liberals and the Democrats and the Republican neoconservatives. And Trump is warning us about the danger of global thermonuclear war. He's talking about things like nuclear test ban treaties with both Russia and China, and he's calling for an end to the wars in Ukraine. And he just recently concluded pressuring Mr. Netanyahu into some sort of ceasefire, apparently, in Gaza, which no one else has been able to do. So there's this incredible contradiction, and we here on the Praxis Report are now going to take some time. John's going to hopefully give us some analysis of all of this and try to figure out sort of what's going on, and more importantly, what's the practical response to it all.
What can we do about this? Well, the first thing I want to bring up, Will, is a interesting social media post because we know Donald Trump loves to post on social media his ideas. He's very off the cuff, and this is something he uses the platform called Truth Social, which is his preferred platform now. And if we want to read this here, this was just a few days ago. Trump is saying, "Hey, look, I'm not trying to hurt Russia. I love the Russian people, and I've always had a very good relationship with President Putin. And this is despite the radical left's Russia, Russia, Russia hoax. We must never forget that Russia helped us win the Second World War, losing almost 60
Exactly.
million lives in the process."
Exactly. I mean, how could you disagree with this? Why do we need Donald Trump to say this? Where are the Democrats? Where are the progressives? Where are the liberals? Donald Trump is calling for peace and détente and support of the Russians who helped us defeat Adolf Hitler in World War II.
Right,
Are you kidding me?
right.
Are we living in some kind of circus-like, fictional unreality where it's only Donald Trump who would say something like this?
Right. Well, let's get to the second part too, because he also goes on. This is a thing we can talk about in a minute. This we can talk about his positive things he says about Russia, but also here he does his peace through strength. He says, "I'm going to do Russia, whose economy is failing, and President Putin a very big favor. Settle now. Stop this ridiculous war. It's only going to get worse. If you don't make a deal soon, I have no other choice but to put high levels of taxes, tariffs, and sanctions on anything being sold by Russia to the United States and various other participating countries. Let's get this war, which never would have started if I were president, over with. We can do it the easy way or the hard way. The easy way is always better. It's time to make a deal. No more lives should be lost." So that's a incredible statement. For there's 100 different things we could talk about in there, but first, like what you were saying, Trump, he concludes that the Russiagate, he says Russia, Russia, Russia hoax. He's referring to the conspiracy theory pushed by the neoconservative Democrats that Trump was installed to power by a secret agent from the Kremlin, if you will, a sort of Manchurian candidate, that Trump was an agent of Putin, an agent of Russia of some kind. And so he's mocking this idea that he was put into power by Russia. And then he, as you said, he praises Russia for helping us defeat the Nazis in World War II, which is a truth that no historian could possibly deny. And yet every politician and intellectual in the United States has to lie about this and deny it because we have to turn Russia from our World War II ally into our Cold War enemy. And Trump seems to be the first president since the dawn of the Cold War, in my mind, who has sought some kind of détente with Russia in that sense, or at least is honoring the legacy of what the Soviet Union sacrificed in World War II.
I have like a personal, I want to kind of take my academic hat off and just, be personalize the issue or
Yeah,
individualize it because there are people from my generation and my parents' generation who fought in World War II. And I'm, full disclosure, we're Jewish. We're both American Jews, Jewish Americans. And, it's just horrific that the whole battle against Nazism and Adolf Hitler is so ignored by the current day liberal Democrats, and the role that the former Soviet Union, the current day Russian Federation, which is the successor state to the Soviet Union, played in defeating Adolf Hitler. 27 million Russians dead. 27 million Russians dead. That's four times what the Jews, my Jewish peoples lost in World War II, and to have only Donald Trump as the only political figure that remembers this and says we need a new, we should rekindle that alliance with the Russian peoples who defeated fascism. It's despicable, and it's just an outrage. And I don't know if I think if John, your grandparents, my parents' generation was
right.
around, and they saw what Biden and the so-called liberals did with regard to making the Russian peoples our enemy. It's just inexcusable. It's inexcusable.
Yeah, and I look at and I teach history. And I am very fascinated by the 1930s and 40s as a time period because in the 1930s, during the New Deal, uh, what people don't want to admit today, but in the New Deal, the Communist Party in the United States was very strong. That was its most popular moment. And the Communist Party at the time had a policy called the Popular Front strategy, where they worked very openly with the New Deal liberals. And there was this sort of alliance with the New Deal liberals against the reactionary forces of the fascists. And so really it was the New Deal liberals and the Communist Party that pushed most of those New Deal reforms through at that time. And then we fast forward towards World War II. America and Russia were allies during the war. It's almost inconceivable to us today. But Hollywood back then was producing films honoring Russia. Frank Capra, who is one of my favorite directors, who did It's a Wonderful Life, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. Frank
Right. Right.
Capra, great films. And during World War II, he was working for the US military. He made a film series of documentaries called Why We Fight, which were a series of films showing why the World War II was happening. And he made one called The Battle of Russia. If that was released today, Frank Capra would be
Yeah.
arrested for being a communist propagandist, a
Right.
Russian agent, because the
Right.
movie is so sympathetic to Russia. It's almost unimaginable that since then, Russia has become so demonized during the Cold War, during McCarthyism and the Red Scare. Any Hollywood picture would show Russians as these evil, villainous monsters. The evil Russians are coming to get us. So for Trump to say what he's saying, it's almost like he's trying to get rid of that entire awful period of Cold War hysteria and McCarthyism and bring back this idea that we can be friends with Russia again. We can have peace with Russia. And I find that to
Yes.
a very positive thing.
It is a positive thing, and I see no other alternative but to support it and support it strongly. It's just a shame that we have no progressive leaders, no liberal leaders, no democratic leaders, no third party leaders who are doing this, who are calling for what Richard Nixon called for, détente with Russia and China. How are we going to survive in the 21st century economy with the emergence of the Chinese economy without good relations with China? Our former governor out in California, Jerry Brown, said that good relations with the Chinese peoples, 1.4 billion people, like 1/8 of the planet's Earth's population, good relations with the Chinese is a prerequisite of any kind of logical economic renewal or economic progress we in the United States are going to make. The whole policy of the neoconservative right-wing Republicans and the neoconservative liberal Democrats aligning with the Cheneys and the Bushes and so forth is just not only immoral, but it's going to just tank our economy if we don't join the rest of the world and renew the American economy. So
So what do you make of the second half of Trump's statement on Truth Social, where he praised Russia, he criticized the
yes,
demonization of Russia, but then he sort of said, "Look, if I was president, this war would never happen, but Putin, you need to sit down and come to the negotiating table, or
yes.
we're going to destroy your economy. We're going to hit you with sanctions, tariffs, taxes. So
Yeah,
either
but
do it the easy way or the hard way."
yeah, but this is Trump taking the Trump approach. You call it peace through strength. I mean, the Clintons would have called this triangulation. So these are just the practical strategies that Trump has found successful. This is why Trump is not the perfect vessel for peace. We'd much rather see the approaches we've been talking about, a progressive approach to peace, true people who are truly interested in peace initiatives and building a structure of peace, who support international law and international institutions and human rights and so forth, and oppose the military-industrial complex. Obviously, Trump's coming at it from his particular point of view, but look how he's doing it, John. He's not doing it by threatening global thermonuclear war, which is
Right.
a good thing. He's doing it in sort of the way, it's almost Clintonian method. The Clintons called it triangulation, sort of coming at it from the right and the left. But the goal is peace, and he's not doing it through threats of
War.
nuclear holocaust, so a
Right. And
global
let's contrast
thermonuclear
this
war.
contrast this with Biden. Biden, who has given, I believe, more than 100 billion, if not hundreds of billions of dollars in weapons and armaments to Ukraine, including
Right,
to the Azov Brigade, which is a Nazi regiment in Ukraine's army.
correct.
And Biden has openly called for regime change in Russia. He has said Putin must go. He wanted to overthrow Putin, and they've discussed plans to basically take the Russian Federation and balkanize it and tear it up, carve it up into tiny little pieces, and have basically American companies come in and loot and plunder the whole thing. So that there, instead of one big country, Russia would be all these tiny fractured little states that can be controlled. So that's a very different approach than what Trump is saying here. Now, I would wonder though, do you think that is going to work? What Trump is asking, because Russia has already been hit with a lot of sanctions by Biden. And Russia's economy did not seem to suffer that much from the sanctions because Russia was able to build new economic relations with countries like China and the other BRICS nations. So it seemed that the sanctions that we imposed on them actually backfired because it allowed Russia to form stronger alliances economically with other countries who are being targeted by the US economy. So, do you
Yeah.
think that that would be something that Trump would able to be able to use successfully, or is it more of another empty boast that
Yeah,
Putin.
I think it's the latter. But I mean that's just my view. And maybe Trump really wants to implement some kind of harsh economic restrictions and then use that as leverage in future negotiations. But I mean, Trump doesn't appear to be so methodical in his approach to anything. I mean, look what he did to pressure Netanyahu into this ceasefire. He sends one of his real estate guys out to go get pull Netanyahu out of the synagogue to say you got to make a peace deal today, and then you can go back to temple. But you'll make the peace deal first, and then go back to temple. So I mean that's just the way he sort of does things. So I think he's sort of adolescent in his approach, obviously. He's not, but he's also an incredibly successful politician. He just routed the Democrats who outspent him and it looked like we're out organizing him and just routed them in the last election.
I think
So
the biggest obstacle is going to. I think Putin would be willing to negotiate a settlement to this. I think the biggest obstacle is going to come from the military-industrial complex, the foreign policy establishment, and not just in the United States, but all around the Western European countries, all the NATO countries, who absolutely hate Trump and despise Trump because Trump making peace with Russia is going against the agenda of the NATO imperialist regimes in the West, who are aggressively pushing for a third world war, a new Cold War against Russia and China. And if
or
Trump is
or,
able
or
to
an actual hot war.
an international hot war, you're right. A Cold
They've
War is the
actually
wrong term
taken.
for it.
I think they've fired off missiles into Russian Federation territory.
They have, and that has threatened the conflict going nuclear because of that.
Correct.
So,
Correct.
so Trump doing this now, the thing you said earlier, peace through strength, I think that's a good idea we could discuss a little bit because what does Trump mean by that? We mentioned that Trump he came to power in the first presidency off of this "Make America Great Again, let's put America first" ideology,
Right.
which was a
Correct.
contrast against the neoconservatives like Bush and Cheney who were aggressively expansionistic. Now Trump seems to be saying, let's seal off our borders, close off the borders to the immigrants, make America strong, make peace with these other countries. But he seems to be wanting to do so in an aggressive way of like, hey, let's expand the frontiers of America. So now we have
Correct.
Mexico, the Gulf of Mexico is the Gulf of America now. And
Right.
we get Greenland and we take their resources and here's Canada. So he is expansionist in his own way, but it's within this context of like strengthening America's borders while also trying to make some kind of negotiated settlements with the rest of the world. So how do we make sense of that? What do we do in response to this? Is this a genuine piece
Yeah,
of or
it's a challenge, isn't it? This is where we're getting paid the big money to try to theorize this sort of thing. Again, Trump is an imperfect vessel to promote the peace movement. But at the same time, the peace movement is so marginalized and unfortunately has been the anti-war movement is so weak since the end of the Vietnam War and Richard Nixon's ending the draft in the United States, that those of us who want to promote a peace front or a coalition that wants to promote peace as sort of the lead issue in a progressive response to what's happening in our politics, we sort of have to take peace where we can find it and get it. And right now, sadly, again, as we've talked about in prior shows, Trump's the only show in town. So at the same time, but it's a hypocritical approach for peace. It's a peace that, on the one hand, increases funding for the military-industrial complex and calls for peace through building up the nuclear and military stockpile weaponry. Trump is calling for some kind of exotic shield over the whole United States. It's going to cost trillions of dollars, but at the same time, he's promoting peaceful coexistence with the Russian Federation and the People's Republic of China. So important to any kind of progressive response towards building any kind of political response to the challenge that we confront. So I think we have to take
Right.
Trump, peace where we can find it. We have to support Trump's peace initiatives, however hypocritical and crazy and madman-like they are, on the one hand, and on the other hand, continue to strike for peace in a progressive way by trying to support political forces that are truly interested in promoting the kinds of things that we're talking about long term. So you got to do both things. And right now, I think these Trump initiatives with regard to Russia and China should be supported. With regard to the Panama Canal, I mean, he's
Yeah.
he's sort of resurrecting Teddy Roosevelt, and this is
Right.
uh, this is like manifest destiny and the Monroe Doctrine and these kinds of American power initiatives that are horrific, and we should oppose them. But still, this begs the larger question. The big challenge right now is peace and détente with Russia and China, and Trump's promoting that, and it should be supported fully. It's the only solution because global thermonuclear war, which is the answer of the liberal Democrats and the Republican neoconservatives, is not a solution. All that will do is end human existence as we know it. So that is just an unacceptable solution.
I think we have to keep mocking the liberal Democrats. I think we cannot pick on them enough because the liberals are the ones who are pushing us to the precipice of nuclear war.
No
And
question about it. No
and
question about
it's insane to me that it's Trump, it's the right winger, the MAGA not neocon, sorry, the MAGA conservatives that are the ones who are pushing for this. And here's an article I think we should look at,
it.
a
Right.
brilliant article that came out. This is in The Hill. Trump wants nuclear reduction talks with China and Russia.
This
This
is so important.
this is brilliant. And you have here Trump was addressing the World Economic Forum in Davos on Thursday and said he wants to hold talks with Russia and China about reducing nuclear weapons stockpiles.
They're even talking about eliminating nuclear weapons. Why
Eliminating.
is it that Donald Trump is the only political figure in America? Where the hell is the Democratic Party? Where the hell is the are the, are the third parties calling for this? Although to be fair, I think the Green Party would clearly does
Right.
support these efforts, as a former, well, a current day Green, actually, full disclosure, and Cornel West and other third part independent leaders, the Libertarian Party also. But my gosh, that in what we call sort of conventional politics, Democrats and Republicans, the duopoly, it's only Trump who's calling for this. Where the hell is the Democratic Party?
Right.
It's shameful that President John Fitzgerald Kennedy initiated the Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, and there's the subsequent treaties. I think this treaty they're talking about is Trump's calling for a renewal of START treaty talks.
Yes, he is.
Incredible,
That's
incredible.
correct.
How can you not support that?
Well,
And
well,
this is going to cement Trump's support by the anti-war voters and anti-war forces.
yeah, and I mean, again, the greatest threat, in my opinion, this is where I disagree most strongly with the liberals. I think that Trump, obviously, we have critiqued Trump, we oppose Trump, but we do not think, like the liberals, we do not have Trump derangement syndrome. We do not think that Trump is this megalomaniacal, larger than life evil that's the epitome of everything that's wrong in the world. In my opinion, the institutions of American imperialist monopoly capitalist society are the greatest threat to humanity because that is what is pushing us to the precipice of nuclear war is American imperialism. And Trump, in his own stupid and blustering way, is
Correct.
kind of going against the tide of the neoconservative war hawks in the Democrat and Republican Party. And if he can actually succeed not only in ending Ukraine war, but also sitting down with China and to discuss denuclearization, then he will have done a great service for humanity. And that's a shameful, shameful thing on the Democratic Party and
Right.
on the left and the liberals who have allowed Donald Trump to take up the mantle of the guy who's the anti-war peace candidate because they've been bought off into this anti-Russia, anti-China, pro-war agenda. And that's just shameful, in my opinion.
I think you summed up everything eloquently and perfectly.
Well, you think that that's a good note for us to end our show on?
I do. If you could send us off and tell us what we're going to do next. Yes.
Yeah. Until next time, I mean, we're going to keep, we at the Praxis Report, we will continue to follow this issue very closely because William and I, we both agree that following the, what Chairman Mao said many years ago, he said imperialism is the primary contradiction. In other words, the greatest challenge that is harming humanity is the power of these great empires, imperialist power that's dominating the world. And so we are putting this issue of war, the issue of peace, the issue of denuclearization, that is the forefront of what we talk about the Praxis report. So we're going to continue to discuss this issue and follow what developments come from these talks with Trump, Putin, and China. Uh,
And, and we'll keep an eye on mass deportations too. I have
Absolutely.
no illusions. We're gonna keep resistance up when resistance is needed, and I that may very well come sooner than later.
Right, and we're not cheerleaders or supporters of Trump or any other bourgeois politician.
No,
We are, theorists. We are analyzing the forces that are at play in the world today. We are not picking that we support Trump or we support that. We are analyzing what is objective conditions are that are moving us either towards war and annihilation or away from it. So if any of our critics are going to say we're Trump supporters and apologizing for Trump, we're not. We're trying to analyze the social forces that are at play here.
right,
But
and hopefully be offer some practical solutions of what people who care about humanity, progress, and civilization can do about this political challenge.
and that's a great topic we will continue to discuss in future episodes, building a peace front, a popular front against the war machine. But until then, we will see you guys next week. That is it for today. This is the Praxis Report. We're trying to bridge revolutionary theory with revolutionary action. So if you enjoyed what we were discussing, uh,
Only history determines what's revolutionary, John.
well, let's we'll see where it goes. But if you guys like this video, please like, leave a comment, subscribe to our channel, visit our Patreon, check out our website, send us an email, drop us a line. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I am your co-host, Jonathan Brown,
I'm your co-host, William Barth.
and we will see y'all next time. Peace.
Peace.